Hey everybody, good afternoon. I know it's the last presentation on the last day. You guys are real excited to be here, so I won't give you anything too heavy. I don't know if you guys remember on airplanes, if they had you in the air over a meal hour, they had to supply you food. Well, I'm not going to buy you all dinner, so we don't have to worry about me keeping you too late. My name is DJ Holly. I work for Securewv. I know one of the accents that the previous speaker had was she wasn't trying to sell you anything. Just because I'm wearing a fancy Securewv shirt and I got a Securewv PowerPoint presentation, I'm not trying to sell you anything right now either. So everybody pretty excited to be here? I'm not feeling it. Okay, so I am from Florida, but I am not Florida Man. So I don't know if you got that joke, if you've seen Florida Man online, and there's a lot of silly stuff that happens down in Florida. Usually it's not from Florida native, so I'm a Florida native. We'll go with that. Submarine Force veteran, worked in the government space for quite a while. A lot of security happens in the government, as you can imagine. Previous presenter, you saw the regulations and STIGs and all of the hard-earned tax money that's spent on security and putting out the regulations and policies out there. So a lot of experience and exposure to that, and I've been doing this IT business for quite a while. I know I only look 35, so it's hard to believe that slide that says 35 plus years, but I am actually a little older than 35. So looking at, what the topic would be, I tried to pick something. I was like, well, I'm not going to sell them anything, so what can I talk to them about? And what do I think is important? And what do I see on the day-to-day in the real world today? Because I think that's probably what you guys want, as a representation of what's happening out there in the real world and how it can benefit you. So the defense in depth is really kind of the key. And, I kind of play a little bit off of the previous speaker where she mentioned defense in depth a couple different times. And so when I look at security, I kind of look at the evolution of security over time, and it all really kind of started with physical security, right? Protecting your loved ones, protecting your house, protecting things, and everything that really has some level of protection associated with it is layered defense, right? Whether it's a doorbell and a door, and maybe you've got rooms inside of your house, and maybe you have a safe in your garage with the guns in it, and maybe you have a locked filing cabinet in your office, and all those things, you're compartmentalizing it and making it a layered defense system. And so just to keep it a little bit light, I put Shrek on there because that might be something you can relate to. The little onions have layers, ogres have layers. Cybersecurity has layers. I see some laughs out there. That's pretty good. So yeah, definitely layers. And I wanted to kind of accentuate what I believe layered defense is not. And so some of the things that I see on the daily are small shops who try to make their network security as easy as possible. And I try to explain to folks that if it's easy for you, it's easy for them. And so I've seen a few /23s, large networks, everything's on the same broadcast domain, everything's fantastic, and it's real easy to implement new gear and not a lot of problems, and everything's great until you're compromised. And then everybody's compromised everywhere, and it makes quite a bit of problems. So what I wanted to show in this slide is that there is a pretty encumbered, you can make it as hard as you want, or you can make it as easy as you want. It is not usually, in a layered defense system, single anything, right? Single user group in Active Directory, single role-based access control, single network segments, single things are really not a thing. And so I just wanted to accentuate that in this. And inside of that anything, it's also usually not like a single firewall and a single gateway with one ISP and all of those things. There's a lot of survivability and redundancy built into what we want to provide for secure networks, but it also has a lot to do with resource allocation and performance, user experience, right? One of the big drawbacks to security is, hey, it's great. I put this firewall in. I got the cheap one because I didn't want to, the big one costs a lot of money. So I got the cheap one and I got all my users on it. But as soon as I enable all the security, things aren't working so good. They're complaining. They're trying to do a Zoom call. It's choppy. It's breaking up. It's not good. I need to figure something out. Your firewall or your security solution isn't good. A lot of times that's born out of not being sized correctly, not having a good understanding of what the traffic types are, and not really realizing what the user expectations are. And so just rolling that up into the single, you probably want to think about that. Am I going too fast for folks at the end of a long day on the second day of the thing? Okay, cool. And so most things that you value have some level of security inherently built in. I put the picture of the human body up there because I think that's important. You got some vital organs there in your chest. I always laugh about, cars didn't have airbags first. The first airbags for protection were actually lungs around the heart. So if you take a hard hit, your lungs fill up, your rib cage tightens up, your ribs get shorter together, it gets harder to, it goes into protection mode. And how that relates to this is communication between security layers, right? Those are actually talking to each other. You got skin, you've got nerves, you've got eyes that are transmitting signals like I'm about ready to take a hit, and you tense up, and that's a lot of components there. And so I wanted to talk, we'll be talking more about that as this goes on, as the communication between security layers is what makes for an advanced security system. Without an advanced security system and the communication in between, it's just singular lines of defense. And then once you breach one, the next line has to learn it all over again. And so if you've got an advanced layered security system and they communicate between each other, because most large companies and even some smaller companies have multiple sites. And if you don't have that communication between the sites and between the security layers, then you're learning hard lessons over and over and over again. If the hackers have the tools, then you should have the tools for protection as well, right? So if the hackers are using machine learning and AI to attack you, and they know what your traffic patterns are, and they know they've been gathering information on you for a while before they hit that I'm gonna take you down button. So they breach you in a single point, they infiltrate your system, they figure out who your admins are, and they're kind of in there messing around. Very rarely do I see nowadays where the breach and attack happen at the same time. Usually it's a breach, they do some data collection, figure out where the prize is, determine whether they're in a honeypot or not, and then go from there. So, am I going too fast still? Okay, good. So the communication between the layers is what makes it an effective and efficient system. I didn't really talk about it yet. I kind of brush over it, but submarines is what I did for a long time. I lived under the water for about 15 years on nuclear submarines. Really taught me a lot about security, because it doesn't get much more secure than sitting at the bottom of the ocean inside of a 300-foot steel tube with 120 guys and a bunch of weapons. So I did that for a minute. I like to say, I was young and in shape then. Now I'm twice the man I used to be. So more layers happen over time, usually out of necessity, right? Those single pane, large, block segments happen, and then you have issues, or you have a need to provide more security, and you increase the number of layers that you have, and you increase the complexity. I do like to play off the previous speaker, so I'll definitely say that she did a very good job of telling you a lot of important aspects, and I'll try to highlight those. One of the things that she said was documentation is key. And so a lot of times you really don't know what you have until you start taking inventory and writing it down and scoping it out and figuring out what it is. Sometimes when I ask people what their network profile is and what kind of traffic they have on their network, they're like, yeah, the usual stuff. And then as you kind of go around, you find out some of the unusual things that are really going on, but you got to kind of probe a little bit. And sometimes you even find things that they didn't think were important, or they didn't remember to talk about. But once you get going, it's kind of one of those things that kind of relate to you folks. I know I don't know how much money that I don't have until I go down and put pen to paper and put my bills down and be like, dang, you guys are a rough crowd. I'm giving you some of my best jokes here. And so the layers get complex. And one of the reasons that people don't like to do complexity is because it means more work. You know, if I have more user groups, I have to make more group policies. I have more segments. I need to track more VLANs. I need to make sure I have more DHCP scopes. I've got a lot more work to do. But I think that is where the work of security comes into play. Questions so far? I'm kind of interactive. If you got any questions or you want to talk, you put your hand up, whatever. I'm good for that. So as defense in depth has kind of evolved, it used to be, you know, you got a bunch of single point lines of defense. You put something in place, it doesn't communicate back and forth, and you have only a few things. So it's no longer good enough to just have the door, you know, the bouncer at the door of a pub, right? Most of the pubs you go to nowadays, they check your ID at the door. You got to be this tall to ride this ride. Got to be this old to get in the bar. But then you sit down at the bar and you look and you're like, yeah, there's cameras, right? And then, you know, just to make sure they're checking everybody's ID, there's an undercover at the bar to make sure they're asking you if you're 21 or not. So there's security components that are around. It's not just at the door. So inside of the network, it's not just a firewall at the main thing and say, well, we don't need endpoint protection, so we don't have to worry about putting clients and agents on the endpoints. We don't need any enhanced security on our wireless access points. We don't need all that stuff. We just want to do a firewall, and that should be good, right? And so some people think that is the case, and it's good, and then sometimes they find out differently. So anything so far? Any questions? Everybody can kind of relate a little bit, maybe? All right. And so one of the things that we do at SonicWall, and this is, you know, I'm not selling you anything. I'm just telling you what our approach to allowing that communication inside there is that we have a thing called capture labs, and those capture labs take information off of our components and they develop and integrate them into a cloud security solution, right? And, you know, I tried to not make the eye chart, so I try to make the big bold print and not a lot of words on there. But the basis of it is these are real-time sensors that are bringing in information into a capture lab environment where we're using machine learning and coordination with other agencies, and a lot of those data points that you saw on the screen in the previous thing, we're sharing information. I want to talk about what I see most of the breaches, and you may have your own experience, but I see a lot of things happen where they're really easy. Like she talked about SonicWall or SolarWinds and said, hey, you know, password SolarWinds123. Seems kind of simple, right? And when you kind of step back and look at it, it's kind of humorous, you know, that something that big can be taken down by something that simple. But a lot of what we see are the use of default passwords, the use of default configurations, not, you know, buying a big firewall, buying these things and not taking the time to employ them the way they should be, implementing best practices, doing maintenance. You know, I ask folks, you know, do you look at your logs? And you'd be surprised on how many times they don't even look at the logs. You know, we got them, you know, if we're breached and, you know, we've got logs and we can provide logs or we can do some forensics after the fact. But I'm more of a proactive security person where I'm not doing the after the fact stuff. It's nice to have, but what you really want to do is be proactive and have those, that, you know, dumping your logs to a SIM for correlation and being proactive in that. So you can see at the bottom, it really just shows the endpoint. So we're getting information off of our firewalls, our access points, our endpoint security, through our email analysis, and the devices that are connected. The information's going back to our capture labs. And we have real-time deep memory inspection. Oh, go ahead. You have a question? No? Okay. So we have a real-time deep memory inspection, which is one component of our analysis inside of the capture labs. We take what we believe to be malicious software. And if it's identified that it's new and we don't really know about it and it's malicious, we bring it into the capture lab. We run it through multi-engine sandboxes to, have it run in an emulated environment and do some virtualization and actually have it go, right? You can learn a lot about something by setting the clock ahead and see, how it's going to act a couple days in advance. And I put this up just to pander to the West Virginia folks. It's a submarine tie-in of the ballistic missile submarine West Virginia. Any questions for me? I had a slide. I think I might have put it on hidden, so I'll just go ahead and talk about it, which is really the tie-in between communication and security, kind of as you see it in the news, where you talk about local governments going and partnering with federal agencies to look at known terrorist databases and those kind of things. That kind of interaction between state, local, federal government didn't really exist for a long time, right? I mean, it's not like you can go on your laptop and go look at the terrorist watch list yourself. It takes a little bit of coordination to get in and look at that information because it's private. So that is the crux of what I'm telling you today, is that a multi-layer security approach has evolved into the need for communication in between the layers and agencies so that you can have a coordinated defense to match the coordinated attack, because the attacks are happening from nation states. They're happening from organizations of attackers. It's not one guy in his garage in his underwear eating a bag of Snickers, attacking you. It is a group, a team, a nation state of people trying to get personal information for resale. They're trying to get money. And that's kind of my message today. Any questions? Productive. I did pretty good on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday night, 30 minutes. The reason I picked 50 minutes for the talk was I didn't want to short you guys out of time to ask questions. Otherwise, it would have just been labeled as a lightning talk. But I can do a 30-minute sales presentation if you'd like me to try to sell you something. You guys get it? I'll end on the good laugh. Thanks for your time today.